One of two reasons that you clicked on this video. Reason one could be that you're interested in audio and production, you want to pursue it professionally and you want some advice. Reason two could be that you saw the thumbnail and you were like, who's this haircut needing kind of guy? Well, if you clicked on for reason one, you're in luck, because I'm going to go over absolutely everything I wish I knew when I started audio years ago. And if you clicked on for reason two, my name is Brendan. I run a commercial audio facility in Calgary, Alberta. We've worked with major companies such as Netflix, thousands of artists across the 7-year time span, and we've worked our way to becoming one of the biggest studios in one of the biggest cities in our country. Due to the volume of clients we get, I feel I've developed a unique perspective as to what I see folks doing right and what I see folks doing wrong. So I kind of wanted to condense a lot of that into this video. My first piece of advice, of the 5 pieces of advice that I'm covering in this video, this is the most boring, and that is to learn from genuine sources. That means don't immediately go to AI for questions. Be actually really wary of Reddit, although there's tons of good stuff on there. And if it's a piece of gear that you're learning, start with the manual. It's so easy to overlook the manual, but like literally it's the best tutorial there is like 90% of the time. And if your intention is to learn how to mix or get into production, although it's 2026, you still absolutely cannot go wrong with books. Mixing with Impact by Wessel Oltherton is a fantastic introduction to mixing and mastering. I personally teach audio engineering out of my recording studio, and that is a book that I pretty much demand my students to buy. This isn't sponsored, by the way. I really just want to see this work out for you guys. Another beautiful book is Mixing Secrets for the Small Studio by Mike Sr. You can pretty much just do with those 2 books, but if you want a third that's very interesting, check out The Zen and Art of Mixing for like a super philosophical and wacky approach to mixing. I find those 2 to kind of be like the holy grail of mixing information. And if you do want to watch videos for mixing, check out The Art of Mixing from like the 90s. I'm going to link all this in the description below. The Art of Mixing might be the single greatest visual introduction to mixing in the world. Even though it's super old school corny, it's just such a great introduction, so I'm gonna link that in the description below. You gotta get the boring stuff out of the way, and you have to do it right. Tip number 2 is just sort of a follow-up to tip number 1, and is to not overlearn from sources. Look, man, sometimes there's a genuine need in audio engineers and artists to kind of just overlearn and keep reading one thing over and over and over again until you feel like you truly understand it. The problem is that can absolutely lead to imposter syndrome. Once you read the cookbook, you actually have to start cooking. You can't just read a million books on swimming then jump into the ocean. Unless you've practiced, you're probably still gonna drown. So don't study your way into imposter syndrome by becoming far more knowledgeable than you are practically skilled. I know it sucks, but you do gotta suck for a bit, that's fine. Okay, tip number 3 is to not abandon the basics and automate away like 90% of what makes music a beautiful thing to practice. I'm sure anybody into this knows that it's super easy to get completely taken away by just scrolling infinitely for a perfect snare, or like scrolling splice all night long and just having to comb through a billion horrible vocal samples to find what you need, or using like a chord generator to kind of find a progression that you like and just doing it over and over and over and over and over. Don't get me wrong, those things absolutely help you develop your ears, and they lead you to what you do like, but you're eventually gonna find that while you've gotten better at articulating what you personally like, the absolute grind of sifting through everything never gets easier just because of how massive these data sets have become. Which leads me to something I feel like a lot of producers still overlook, which is to learn an instrument. Once your ear's developed from like grinding away splice and drum samples and just patterns and chord progressions, picking up an instrument will be most challenging in the coordination sense. Once you get decent, which doesn't take forever, all of those skills that you've developed in music production prior will just carry right over, and chord progressions will become super easy for you to find. They'll become so much more rewarding. Bob Ross style happy accidents will become so much more frequent, and that just makes everything so much more electric and enjoyable. There are so many nights I have at the piano where I'm just improvising and I hit a note and I'm like, dude, that is beautiful. I never could have come up with that on Splice. I never could have found that on my own on a piano roll. So even if just to broaden your toolkit, do not forget the basics and do not automate away and rely entirely on data aggregation for your sole mean of production. Okay, tip number 4 is to not absolutely over encumber yourself with hardware, software, and all of the things that are extremely overhyped on Instagram and YouTube Shorts a lot of the time. The consumer and creator side of our industry is absolutely targeted by just straight up FOMO engines that make you believe that you need to subscribe to a bunch of plugin software or upgrade your software at a paid jump or buy like the newest little chord synth or whatever it might be. Otherwise, you're not going to sound as good as everyone else. Otherwise, your musical expression will be limited. Hype, market cycles, buy your way to the top kind of has become the normal thing to kind of feel you can do. And that's not your fault. These companies, they know that that's what gets to us. But as a professional in the industry, I very seldom see folks actually benefit from paying more. If you really feel like you need more than what the stock plugins in your DAW offer, make sure you wholeheartedly understand why and do your best to document the limitations that you're finding in your DAW to begin with so that you're actually making a genuinely informed decision. The industry has done really good to take a few very concentrated tools, EQ, compression, saturation, spatial effects, and spread them across a billion other brand named products. And it could get to the point where when you open your plugin list, it's just so massive and so broad that the mere act of just creating can become like extremely expensive and tiring. Upgrading from version 1 to version 2 of a plugin most of the time will be like a 2% difference, and at the most, and most of the time you don't even really need what version 1 offers, so just be wary of this. Because of the way that plugins and gear's hype nowadays, my piece of advice would be that if you're gonna buy something, sleep on the purchase decision for 2 to 3 days, and just do your best to make genuine sure that you actually need what you're looking at. I'm not innocent here. I've purchased so many things that I've ended up just selling right away because they actually end up either limiting me, overwhelming me, or just making my music sound more generic and worse and contrived. And even in my professional studio here, I'll tell you a secret, we barely stray from basic like FabFilter products and like some sound toy stuff. And before the 5th tip, just keep in mind that vocal chains are also like a humongous scam. What works for one artist's voice will not always work for like majority of other artists. For example, Drake's vocal chain is not gonna be working for like Lady Gaga. He's got a lower voice. He's got different rhythmic consistency, so you have to compress him differently, you have to EQ him differently. It might be a good thing to buy these and like kind of deconstruct them if you're interested, but buying into the fact that you can sound like an artist just by using their vocal chain, that's also a humongous scam. Just keep this in mind. Okay, so in tip 5, I gotta preface that I'm not giving legal financial advice, but tip 5 is to value yourself properly. You know what makes it hard to actually create art? Not being able to even afford a can of soup. The money that you save from not just buying a billion trillion plugins and synths, I'd recommend squirreling some of that away, investing it, and building up a little bit of financial stability. This means that if you want to work professionally, when there are client downturns, you have some cushion. You have less financial stress, which means maybe hopefully you can create a little bit freer. And rather than just giving your money to a bunch of greedy FOMO companies, you can start building up money for a family and for like generational wealth. I know it sounds like it's not a huge audio tip, but unfortunately, our industry is absolutely ripe with like a super consumerist mindset. And that's not your fault. That's these corporations who are just aware of it. Trust me, I probably would have been rich if I didn't just buy a billion plugins and pieces of equipment because I was just jumping on a hype train. And on the final note of valuing yourself, if you do want to break into the industry professionally, you are a professional the absolute second that you feel confident to put your services out there. You don't need to graduate school or pass a course to be a professional. The moment that you start looking to find your first clients in mixing, mastering, and recording, you are a professional. Just by definition, you're actually like professionally offering these services. So this part's important. While it makes sense to start with like lower rates, do not keep your rates low for long. Do not undervalue what you've spent so much time learning. You're a skilled tradesperson at the end of the day, because undervaluing yourself might make you hate this art. You're more likely to work for clients who undervalue you or don't see the value in what we do. And revisions hurt when you're getting emails pretty much demanding them and you've been paid nothing to do the job to begin with. Also, we're kind of responsible for the value and worth of our industry and the hours we've put in studying and working. If you undervalue your services, you do send a signal to everybody else that audio engineers aren't worth much. And it's not true. Although we're a new art form for the most part, we do work really hard, and we all got to work together to make sure that what we do is valued and respected. Okay, that concludes my video. I made this video because I genuinely do care about this industry, and I have made so many mistakes myself over the last 7 years in this industry, just like messing around. I had to learn from them all, so I tried to present them as best as I could here. Side note, by trying to practice what I preach and implementing some of these rules into my own life, I've been able to do good enough to give back $100,000 of in-kind services to my local arts community, which means that I'm doing what I love, and I'm helping other people do what they love. And sometimes it does just start by not spending $1 trillion on something version 3.7. I genuinely do hope this helps somebody out. And if you find the video useful in any kind of way, make sure that you leave a subscription. It really helps me. Drop a like and leave a comment down below if you feel like I missed anything, or if you relate to anything that I've said, or if you relate to anything I went over in this video. I feel like a lot of us have the exact same struggles, so I'm trying to do my part by kind of overlaying what I've learned in my time in this business. I really do appreciate you guys listening to me yap, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.